Hey guys, welcome back. So treat your addiction like it's a part of you, a personality of yours, okay? This idea basically comes from a writer named Richard Schwartz who wrote a book called No Bad Parts, okay? And the concept is this: addiction is a part of you that is a younger part that is crying out for something, okay? Some part of you in your early childhood was wounded deeply. And at some point you picked up this addiction, and it can be to anything, right? It can be drugs, alcohol, sex, shopping, eating, gambling, right? And at some point, this child in you, when you were a kid, you picked up this addiction, whether it was behavior or a substance, and it helped you to cope with life. And this addiction has created a life of its own. And now as an adult, it doesn't help you anymore. Now it's harming you. That's the ironic thing. It starts as a help, and sometimes it actually saves your life and gets you through the most traumatic situations. But now it's the very thing that is destroying your life, taking away your time and your energy, right? Threatening to put you in jail and kill you even. Making you hurt friends and family, hurt yourself, bringing thoughts of suicide and things like that. So the idea is this, that your addiction is a part of you. It's not going anywhere. So in a way, you make friends with it. Now, I'm not talking about just listening to what it says and doing it all the time. No, we've all done that. So I'm saying if you're trying to escape an addiction, this is a model to use internally. Okay, now as an addict, you know that those thoughts are always with you. Okay, so it is part of you. And you can't exactly shut it up, right? You've tried. You've just ignored it. That doesn't work. You've told it to shut up. That doesn't work. You've used religion and a code of morals to just beat it over the head. I'm not going to do that, right? Even stoicism, you know? I used to be a straight edge from the hardcore movement, and we just used morals and morality. I'm not going to do that. That's not good, right? And, you know, your preacher probably told you that. Just read scripture and just resist the devil and he will flee. Okay, if that works for you, then great. You don't have to watch this video. But for a lot of people, that doesn't work. Why? Because it's not really a moral issue. There are some things that people can just give up, and morally they just tell themselves, I won't do that, and they're able to do that. Okay? As an addict, you may be addicted to drugs, but you can say no to sex. Or you might be a sex addict, and you can say no easily to drugs, right? But the other thing, you have a real hard time. So there's something called powerlessness. That's mentioned in the Bible in Romans 7. Paul says, if I do the things that I don't want to do, it's not me that does it, but actually it's sin that lives in me. Right? He says, I do the things I don't want to do, and the things I want to do, I can't do. That's addiction. Okay? If you're able to stop doing something because you want to stop, that's not an addiction. That's just a habit you had and you kicked it. That's awesome. So there are people who have tried to get rid of an addiction under every single means and nothing works. Okay? 12-step programs, religion, all right? So this model is somewhat in opposition to 12-step thinking, or in other words to say it is, you won't hear this said in 12-step meetings most likely. It's not really part of the program. You may hear it spoken in the meetings, but I believe that this model can be used in conjunction with 12-step program, even in conjunction with a religious program where you do read scripture, or you do resist the devil and he flees, okay? Because there is some truth to that. So this is the idea, right? When that addiction starts speaking, because it will, you know, usually it's right first thing in the morning, right? Oh, you should do this. You need to do this, meaning the addictive things. Or it'll put little temptations. Oh, you know, that would be nice. You know what you really need. And it comes to us, right, at times of sadness when we're upset, and it also comes times in joy. So it's always there. You can't get rid of it. And guess what? It doesn't listen if you just yell at it or exercise it, right? That's another option that people have done. Maybe they've had success. I've tried that. For me, that didn't work, right? Doing deliverance and getting exorcisms and getting the demon out and getting the addiction out. It's not going anywhere, because why? It's part of you. It's part of who you are. It's not who you are 100%. In fact, who you are, if you're a believer, is a child of God now, right? So we should know our identity in Christ. However, this part of you is still there. And it might be telling you to do all kinds of insane things. And sometimes the more you resist it, the quicker you give in, right? So you're powerless over this addiction. It has a grip on you, and you can't fight it on your own. You need God, right? And usually people need some kind of support system, a 12-step program that will help them surrender, and then these things can be removed. There is a solution, and things do work. So this is an aspect that I believe can be used best in conjunction with 12 steps for the best results. Okay? So when that addiction starts talking to you, hey, you should do this, you should do that. Remember when we did this and how fun it was? Remember when you got away with this? Oh, nobody will know. Oh, it doesn't even matter. Okay? Right? I'm speaking out the thoughts that we hear as addicts. Now, you have two options, essentially, or three. You can ignore it, you can yell at it, or you can understand that it's part of you and it's basically your friend, but it's very misguided. And that's the version that I'm bringing here forth now. Okay? So you listen to it. In other words, the thoughts are going and you hear it, but you treat it as if it's a part of you, but also sort of separate. It's not your own thoughts. It's not you. That's where we get it twisted. As addicts, we go, oh no, I shouldn't think that. I shouldn't want that. And then next thing you know, you're doing it. You're like, wait, why am I doing this? I don't even want to be doing this. As addicts, you know that experience, and you've said it many times, maybe even out loud as you're going to get to the dealer. I told myself I would never do this again. Why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? Right? So in this model, you hear out the thoughts and you hear out the desires, but you act as the adult in the situation. You recognize that this is a little child within you. This is some wounded part of you that went through some really bad traumas, right? And hopefully you've done some work and you understand what your traumas are, and you can comfort your inner child. So there's different options, right? You can go, as it's telling you, hey, we should, rent a car and drive to a foreign country and just go all out, right? So you hear it out, and you don't ridicule it. You don't lecture it. You don't say, no, I can't do that. I can't. First of all, you speak to it as a separate person. Pretend it's like a child next to you who's in your car. You're driving, and they're in the passenger seat, and they're going, we should do this, we should do that, with all these crazy, and you hear it out, and you go, okay. And you say, yeah, I hear you. It'll be really good to do this. I hear you. You would really like to do that. I understand why you would like to do that. Maybe you're hurt today, or I know you. So, and you just be careful not to patronize it. Because the more you patronize it or lecture it, the more strong it's going to get in its insistence and its power over your mind. So the more you fight it, again, with religion or with willpower and lecture and stoicism, it's going to get stronger and it's going to take over. So in this version, this model, you hear it out, it's empathetic listening. You say, yeah, I understand what you're saying. And really, you can just do that. You can just keep saying, I understand. And the more it talks, I understand. Yeah, I totally get it. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I get it. And then after you sort of listen and it sort of peters out and it stops for a little bit, or it's kind of exhausted in that moment, then you can say, but we're not going to do that today because I'm the adult and that's not good for us. You don't have to lecture too much, but you basically just say, well, we're not going to do that today. Not today. You're the adult. You're driving the car. You have the authority. Okay? This part of you is a child. And children should be heard, especially wounded children. Right? So if you've ever had children or worked with kids, you understand that this is how it works. If you have a kid who's freaking out, okay, and they're really upset, they're over the top, maybe they're having a tantrum, they're screaming, they're yelling, they're crying. Adults, very often, they do the worst thing they can do, which is just immediately start lecturing. Sit down. I told you to sit down. You're not listening. You're being bad. And then you heap it on top when they don't calm down, right? And you get into threatening and throwing out punishments. I'm going to take away this. I'm going to take away that. So what do you know? They get more upset, and the tantrum gets higher and higher. So they're missing a step. It's just one simple step. The And most people don't know, they're not taught. Teachers aren't taught it, parents, but I'm gonna bring it out right here, and it works every single time. The idea is that the child is upset, so they need some validation. They need to be heard out. They need to be listened to before the lecture can happen. They're not going to be able to ingest the information that you're giving them in the lesson, which is good to do. We should give them lessons about morality and what to do and what not to do. But we should also acknowledge their feelings, which are 100% valid. And if you start to tune into where they're at, put yourself in their shoes, because they're just humans, they're just shorter than you, and they've been on the planet a shorter time and they need your help. Put yourself in their position. How would I feel if I was only alive for 2 years or 3 years, and I'm thrown into this situation and somebody grabs my toy, and at home I don't have to share toys, and somebody just snatches a toy from me, you know? Or I've been with my mom all day long. That's the natural state. I personally don't believe that children should be away from their mothers before the age of 4. Most cultures, actually, the mothers breastfeed their kids until they're like 3 or 4 years old. And if the human body produces milk for that long, I believe that that's God's design, and that's what, in an ideal world, should be happening. I don't believe that children should be put in school, ideally, before the age of probably 4 or 5. Okay, so preschool daycare is very unnatural, and it came from after the feminist movement, right? From my understanding, when the Rockefellers wanted to split up the family and get women in the workplace, get control of the children in their minds, which they've done. Okay, so I'm not going too far into that, but it is what it is now. We're in the situation we are. So imagine you're a little kid and you're thrown into this such an unnatural situation, and all you want is mom. So no matter what you say, they just keep screaming, mom, 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 mommy, mommy, right? That's legitimate. So what I'm saying is, you want to hear out that part. You want to hear out that thing when the kid's upset. You say, understand where they're at. You say, wow, you think I would feel that way too. So you say, oh, you miss mommy. Oh, yes, I understand. You just give them that empathetic voice, that empathetic listening. And what do you know? The behavior disappears. Why? Because bad behavior is simply a need that's not being met. If the need is met, the bad behavior disappears. So our job as caretakers is to not always punish the bad behavior and focus on that, which most people do. Look behind the behavior. What is this kid trying to communicate? This is communication. He's using language. He doesn't have the language right now. So he's acting out to try to convey a message. They need help. They're screaming, I need help, I need help. That's what you should see bad behavior as. Okay, now, real quick, not in all situations. Sometimes they just want something, and you can dispel it easily like that. But majority of the time, bad behavior is coming out of a unmet need, and they're screaming for help. Please help me, please help me. Okay? Maybe they need help to communicate their feelings. Maybe they need just a hug or a listening ear. Yeah, you miss your mom, I understand. It's okay. Mommy's coming back. Now, it may not be immediate, but eventually, as you continue that, they will calm down. Because, again, they're humans. They're just people. Smaller people. And that's what we all need, right? If you're upset, think about it logically. If you're an adult and you're upset, right? You're in traffic and you've had some road rage situation. You get to work and your boss is, whining, and you get home and your spouse is yelling at you and the dogs, right? You're just at that point, and let's say you're upset and they're just like, why are you upset? Sit down, right? Sit down and listen. What's wrong with you? You're being bad. I'm going to take away this and that. You're like, excuse me? You're about to swing at them. Everybody knows this. Anybody who studies crisis intervention, the way to diffuse a crisis situation, I'm talking with adults, is to just listen and hear them out, right? I used to work, I've got trained in crisis intervention, and that's exactly what they told me, and I was already used to doing that. Also, I used to work in customer service, and I loved working with the irate customers because all I would do is just listen to them, because that's all they want to sometimes be. They just want to be heard, and that's the same with children, right? So you see, when they're angry and they're coming at you, oh, I hear you. Yes, no, I understand. I would feel the same way. I totally understand. Sometimes that's all they need is just to be heard. That's an adult. So how do you think about a child? It's the same thing. I miss mom, and people start saying things like, like don't cry, stop crying. What? No. You say, yeah, I understand. I miss mom. You know, sometimes you don't even have to say anything. You just sit there and you look at them and you just nod and you're like, you know, you give like that empathetic look or voice or words, okay? And you mirror back what they're feeling so that they can understand, okay, this is what it is. And then if you want to offer comforting words, that's awesome too. Mommy will be back. She always comes back. Mommy always comes back to pick you up. She comes back after nap time. She will come back after whenever, you know. She's at work right now, but she will come back, don't worry. Okay? These different things. So you do the same thing with your addiction. I hear that you want to do that. I hear it. Yeah. So you comfort first, you empathize first, you listen, you hear, you validate. And then once it's kind of said its piece and you've listened, right? Then you can say, you know, but we're not going to do that today. You know, today we're going to, and then you speak out the good things that you want to do in the day, right? Because as addicts, we have all kinds of desires and fun things we'd like to do. And our addiction comes along, we're not able to do them, right? Because it just makes us do all the other stuff. So you say, after you listen, you say, you know what? Today we're going to go to the beach. We're going to have a fun time at the beach. You know, and then they might say, yeah, but, you know, at the beach we used to buy drugs so we could do that, or, you know, whatever it is. And then it'll come again and be like, yeah, I hear you. And then maybe you don't need to say anything at that point about, we're not going to buy drugs at the beach. You go to the beach, and as it comes back, you hear it out again. Okay? You do this in conjunction with prayer to God, your higher power. You ask God to remove these desires, you talk to God about it. Okay, I'm not saying that will be the only thing that will help you. It may, but I think for the best results, to do all these things together. You know, go to meetings, have your group, have your fellowship. Okay, do the 12 steps. But when that voice comes in, treat it as a part of you that is a younger child or the younger version of you that is screaming out for something and needs help. And that's the way it coped in the past. It's not working anymore. So hear it out. Excuse me. So Richard Schwartz talks about this in his book, No Bad Parts. Okay? And he talks about addictions where people couldn't kick them. They tried everything. And he talks about this woman who was a cutter. And he was doing the traditional thing of addiction and, you know, just resist it or do something else. And it was working for a while, and then all of a sudden he came back and she had like really, really harmed herself really bad. And he was just at a point where he was just like, I don't know what to do. I'm not helping these people, right? And then he sort of discovered or came up with this understanding of no bad parts. That there are all these different parts of you, including the addiction, and they're not bad. They're actually good. They're actually your friends. They're just very misguided. And you can't get rid of them. They live with you, so you best make friends with them. Right? So you hear them out and you listen to them. What do they want? What do they, and you try to understand. And you say, oh, I get it, you know? And then you, in the position of the adult, say, we're just not going to do that today. Okay? So we're talking about other personalities in a sense. And this brings us into the topic of dissociative identity disorder, which I'm going to make another video about. But you have dissociation, which we all do, which is part of the human mind, which means you basically zone out, okay? And you're not focused on the thing and you're somewhere else. Your mind sort of goes away. And it's a spectrum that dissociation can be on. Now, when you have a great trauma, a lot of times the human mind dissociates from the situation that's happening. And sometimes the greater the trauma and the less that the person has a capacity to deal with said trauma, which includes many different factors, including age. So the younger, the less understanding they have about what's going on and the ability to cope and process. So the mind splits off and dissociates. Okay? So many people believe, myself included, that addiction is actually that. It's from this process that we've learned and created ourselves as children because of traumatic situations where we dissociate. Addiction itself is a dissociation technique where you're using the drugs or the alcohol or the sex or the food or the money or the spending or the working, whatever it is, to dissociate from your current situation. you're having a hard time dealing with your life, and then you go into your addiction, and it just brings you out away. And you want to stay there, but you can't. You have to come back to your life, and that's always a struggle. And you have this double life that you're leading, right? So that's what happens with addiction. And your addiction is like another personality. So that's the idea, is that you treat it as if you understand it, you treat it as a friend. It's not your enemy. You can't get rid of it. It's going to be with you forever. It's always going to be talking to you. I understand it's annoying and it's very frustrating. And as an addict, sometimes you think the worst things about is you have no solution, right? So suicide comes into mind sometimes, where it's like, I don't want to do this anymore, okay? So this, my friends, is an idea to help you with that. Again, with conjunction with a higher power, 12 steps, and things like that. So when children go through extreme traumas, sometimes they split off so bad, their mind goes so far from the situation, that it actually creates another identity, aka personality, or like mental state. It's so bad that they had to forget what happened, that at that moment they went somewhere else, and they just created a totally different thing with the imagination. Okay, the human mind is an amazing thing, and dissociation and split personality, etc., is actually an amazing gift that God gave the human psyche. Because if we didn't have it, people would go insane and probably kill themselves, or all become serial killers or something, because of all the horrible stuff that went on with them. But dissociation is a natural process that God created. It's just what the mind does. And sometimes it splits off and it creates another reality with a different name sometimes. It's even a different age, okay? So a lot of times when we're an adult, that split off part is still with us, it's still alive, and it's still that age. So a lot of times addiction is a younger part of us. And it can be many different ages, right? It can be a little kid, it can be an adolescent. So just hear it out, recognize it's a smaller part, it needs help, it needs to be heard, and it wants to know how to get better, okay? So maybe I'll end it there for now, and I'm going to do another video about dissociation and multiple personality disorder, because it used to be called multiple personality disorder. People think that's weird, another personality. But they changed the name to dissociative identity disorder, and that's a more accurate and understandable term. It's an identity crisis, right? It's an identity. So when you have that split, and if it's super traumatic sometimes, and they don't have the ability to cope, right? It's totally separate from them. And addiction is that. It's totally separate from you. It's not actually you in a sense. The true you is the one that wants to do good things, that loves to do certain things. Like, let's say you want a committed relationship with a person who loves you and values you, and that's what you really, really want, that's what you desire, and yet all you do is keep going on, like meeting with horrible people who abuse you, and right, and there's some, right, so it's like what you're doing is going against your own value system. If that's happening, that's an addiction. It's another part of you. So this technique may help you. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is an amazing book you should read if you're an addict. Okay, that book will actually absolutely save your life, I believe, essentially. Talks about that a moral code and a new set of morals, if that was enough for us, we would have recovered from our addiction long ago. So that's, just hopping on morality, which is what religion sometimes is just a new set of morals. That this is the way it should be, and we shouldn't do this. Yeah, of course, no duh. Everybody already knows that. But that's not enough for addicts to change them. Okay? The book talks about that. It says we had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we couldn't live up to them. We couldn't put them into action because we lacked the power. So our problem is we're powerless. We don't have the power to act on these belief systems that we may or may not have. But a lot of us have these through religious training, through our own study. Okay, as Christians, we have these values that Christ gave us, right? Don't even look at a woman with lust, right? Follow the 10 Commandments. But then Paul clearly tells us that the more law there is, the more my body and my flesh and my mind wants to rebel. And I find myself doing the things that I don't even want to be doing. So that's a test for if you're an addict or not. Okay, if you don't even want to be doing what you're doing deep down, it's not even fun anymore. Yeah, maybe it's partially fun, but for the most part, it's bringing you suffering and it's bringing bad things in your life, and you're still doing it, you might be an addict. Okay? Another test is this. If you're doing the thing more than you want to, if you try to stop and you find that you can't, or you find that when you're doing it, you can't control how much you're doing or what you're doing, it's the big book tells us that you are probably an addict. So that is the number one test, my friends. Another video I'm going to make, okay, coming up about powerlessness and unmanageability, the mental obsession, and the physical allergy of the body. These are what constitutes addiction. Real quick, the mental obsession tells you you need to do this thing, and it constantly goes, and that's the part I'm talking about now as the separate part of you that you can listen to. That's the addiction. The problem centers in the mind.